Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be on legendary heroes that I think need some kind of rework or buff to help them become more relevant again in the meta. I was watching a stream today and I saw this jerk utilizing a lot of light and dark legendaries, and it made me think, oh man, some of these heroes that used to be so good are nowhere to be found anymore. Because they're just so outclassed by a lot of the newer heroes in the game. Now, I know that's a common thing in games like this, right? They release new heroes to get people to summon for those heroes. Like, oh, look at how awesome this one is. It's so much better than so-and-so. But I do think that they still need to keep some of the older ones relevant. So I do have some ideas on who to rework and fix. It actually isn't as many heroes as I thought there would be, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, I do have some notes written down here. So let's talk about what I think would make these heroes better and more relevant. And again, it goes without saying that this is just my opinion, right? This is what I think would make them relevant. So if you think I made them completely overpowered with my changes or whatever, that's fair. It's just what I think would make them relevant. So just always take these things with a grain of salt, all right? So we're looking at all legendaries here. Okay, so starting off with light. I do think that Urian is perfectly fine. I think he's not as overpowered as he used to be, which is going to be the norm, but he is still a really good AoE nuker. And if he's built properly with some books in him, he can still one-shot entire teams. So I don't think he needs any kind of rework. So Zoltan just came out not too long ago with, the likes of Dark Valeria, with Dark Hassel, Shark Soul Andre, and Divine Yolanda, and he is by far the worst out of that bunch. The problem is he doesn't have any kind of self-sustain on himself. He does get it whenever he's ascended, which is always unlikely, to summon 3 copies of a light and dark, let alone a specific one. So that's really not an option. On top of that, even if he is ascended, he only gets this bonus lifesteal whenever he reaches max stacks. And because I don't have an ascended one, I don't know if this falls off, like if this lifesteal goes away, if his stacks are not at 7. Because, once he kills someone or once a member of the enemy's team dies, these enchanted blade stacks fall off. It says it's unremovable, but it can fall off of Zoltan himself if one of your enemy heroes dies. So if that were to fall off, then this lifesteal is completely useless, but I'm assuming it isn't. But even still, getting 7 stacks, max stacks, is really hard with Zoltan, and pretty easy to play around, to be honest. So the changes that I would make to him is up here on his basic trait, give him 25% bonus lifesteal if he reaches 6 stacks, which I think is still not very hard to do. But it would give him, that sustain, and I think you could build him in different ways to make him really, really relevant in the meta. So that's what I would do. I think he needs some kind of sustain on his basic trait without being ascended, and it needs to be easier to get than 7 stacks. So that's my change to Zoltan. Now, Evelyn First Dawn, I think, is the worst light and dark legendary. She's been completely outclassed by a free legendary if you were playing the Attack on Titan collaboration. So what I would do with Evelyn First Dawn, first thing, with her trait here, she has this aura, which is the only thing she's useful for in a PvP setting. Her ultimate is pretty good in PvE settings still. I use her in different areas of the game there. But her aura here, I think, should be just a smaller version of her ascended one. So I think her trait should start at 10% defense and attack for all team members. And if she's ascended, they get 20%. I think this trait is fine, but if your team members got attack and defense just like at 10%, and then the Ascension is a bigger boost, I think that would be a nice change. Then with her ultimate ability, so she does 100% damage to all enemies, which is like negligible. She's never doing any damage, and then applies defense down to the main target. I think this needs to be changed to an AoE. There aren't a whole lot of AoE defense down units in the game. I actually think there's only like one. Is there only one? There might be just one. And the fact that this isn't AoE on a light legendary is pretty nuts. And then the other thing is grants all allies a bonus turn at the end of the round. I think if this also granted her a bonus turn immediately, this would be pretty cool, because then she can go into her special and have a joint attack, with one of your allies, along with granting them that bonus turn. So if she granted herself a bonus turn immediately after this, not only would it reduce the cooldown, but then she's able to go in and do a joint attack with your strongest character. So I think those buffs would grant her, some decent playability in the meta then. I do think she's really slow and stuff still, but I think she's meant to be a tank and a bruiser. So those are the changes that I think would make her kind of relevant. And it might not even be enough still. Light Nick, I think, is perfectly fine. He's definitely relevant in the meta. So Crazed Urzag, he had some buffs recently, with this block not being able to be removed and stuff. I still think he needs a little bit of love. I still don't think he's very relevant. So what I was going to recommend was his Bloodshed act similar to Dark Valeria here. So she has this ultimate ability that applies stun to enemy for 1 turn if they have no positive effects after receiving damage, and then removes all positive effects on them otherwise. So what I would do with Crazed Urzag is have a similar wording here, where he removes positive effects, with a 30% chance. That's still fine whenever he uses this Bloodshed ability. But if they don't have any positive effects, it has a 50% chance to apply a stun or something like that. So it still gets some use even if you've already removed the buffs, because there's a lot of times where this ability will trigger before Crazed Urzag goes. And if you remove buffs, from someone else activating this ability, and then you get to go and can possibly stun your opponent, I think that would make him really relevant, to be honest. But the fact that this doesn't do anything if you don't have any buffs to remove is a bit of a bummer. So that's what I would change there. Brand the Brilliant. I do think this hero is good. He's really nice in Void Tower Mythic, although now with Dark Castle being released, he's irrelevant there. So that's a bit of a bummer. In PvP, he's still pretty good, but I wouldn't say he's relevant. What I would change here is have him have a trait be just like this, but he also have the same wording as Divine Yolanda, where he can't take more than 65% max health at each instance of damage. Because the big thing going against Brand is you can one-shot him before this invincible gets put up, with his health dropping below 50%. So if that 65% indicator was there just like Divine Yolanda, I think he'd become really relevant. And then also, I'd like to see that this invincible is not removed. That'd also be cool, considering, there's plenty of heroes right now that have, unremovable death immunity buffs that are on light heroes and yada, yada, yada. So if that was not removable, I think that would also go a long way for Brand the Brilliant. Holy Armor Virgil and Divine Yolanda are completely fine. If anything, Divine Yolanda needs a nerf. So Abaddon is still like a PvE god when it comes to bosses. I don't think he needs any kind of rework. So Dark Dragon Asrina, I think, so her trait is just completely useless. Like granting a shield on a character based on her max health, like she's extremely squishy. I think her trait is absolutely miserable. Now, when she's ascended, the strength scales on her attack and max health, which plays into her kit because her ultimate puts up Ignite, which is based on the applier's attack. So you want to have her in high attack. So maybe the shield is useful once the attack stat is calculated in. So it'd be nice to see this based on attack and max health, and then if she's ascended, maybe add speed to it as well because she's pretty fast. So that's what I would do. I would change her trait here to have attack and max health be applied to this shield, and I would like to see her grant immunity to herself at the beginning with this trait as well, but have the immunity as a cooldown. You know, if she's putting up immunity every turn, that's kind of busted. Even though you could remove it, I think that would be a little too strong. So that's one thing. And then the other part is her passive is what she's known for. But I think this 50% chance to apply silence needs to be 100%. If this was 100%, I think she would be really, really relevant in the meta, even as squishy as she is. She would counter a lot of different units. So that's what I would change. I would change this silence to 100%, as well as updating her trait to make this shield useful and giving her immunity so she can't be like controlled, which puts your opponent in a pickle with trying to give themselves, you know, those passive buffs. So that's my change to Dark Dragon Asrina. So Corrupt Aurak is completely fine. Aubrey's completely fine and relevant in the meta. So Imogen, I don't have her. I don't really understand. Well, I understand what she does, but I don't know enough to say if my changes are good or bad. But basically what I was looking at with her kit was her ultimate can do decent damage, but at the same time, this removing one positive effect seems pretty lackluster. So I thought it'd be cool if it removed all positive effects on all enemies. I thought that would be pretty deadly. Considering how slow she is, maybe it wouldn't even matter. But that's one of the things that I was thinking with Imogen. And then also, she depends on her Moonlight stack, so I think she needs 3 stacks to start off with just her base trait. And then gain maybe like 4 or 5 here on her Ascension. But like I said, I'm a little light on my knowledge of Imogen. So then Dark Nick just got a buff. He's actually really relevant now and kind of a menace. Garnet is still really good. Dark Hassel is arguably the best hero in the game overall. In PvP, he might be outclassed by Divine Yolanda, but I think overall he's definitely the best. Like when it comes to Void Tower Mythic, Guild vs. Environment, even though Divine Yolanda is really good there, PvP, he's nuts. It's crazy. Dark Valeria is also in the same boat. Like her Dark Hassel and Divine Yolanda are just so good. Like they're on a different planet on just how good they are compared to the other lane Darks. And then Shark Solandre is still extremely good. So none of those need buffs. All right, so on to green. So Desmond here, he's, like I said in a couple different videos, he's the running joke of this game. For some reason, this plague does not work on bosses. And I just want to see if he would be relevant if it was. So I would love to see that taken off. I think the rest of his kit is terrible, but he's all around this plague. So if plague is used on bosses, maybe he would be useful in Guild versus Environment. Maybe he would be useful in some dungeons. So I'd like to see that happen, to be honest. I don't even know if that change would be good, but I'd like to see it. So Bulin is still extremely relevant. in a lot of places in the game. I don't think she needs any kind of buff. God Fairy is also really good, and I think a lot of people underrate this character. I want to build mine a little better, actually, because I've noticed Halia is being used more and more in the meta, and God Fairy is actually pretty good against her in PvP. Kasim, I think, is great. A little spoiler from my last RTA video, I actually have a Kasim built now, and I'm starting to book him, and he's pretty good. So I'm actually really enjoying him. So Rick is actually one who... Rick is actually kind of good, but he still needs a little bit of love because he's a bit outclassed by Ashlyn right now, which made his ultimate not irrelevant, but she's a much better choice. So this ultimate is still really good. The thing is his passive, he counterattacks anytime that the person who has this mark from his ultimate attacks. But the thing is, he needs to be in stealth. I think they just take the stealth state condition away, and he just counterattacks anytime that person with Mark of Doom casts abilities. I think that would increase Rick's playability for sure. So a simple thing there. I think Yolanda is really good, and I don't think she needs any buff. She's a solid unit. So Avera. Avera used to be like the marquee wood nuker, but then Baron came along, and that just all went out the window. So Avera needs like a total makeover. What I would suggest is on her Ascended here, this 50% chance to apply defense down to enemies, I think it should just be AoE. You know, it's hard enough to get to the 4 rage, you know, especially in a PvP setting, that I don't even know if this would be relevant, but I think that is an upgrade that could be useful. And then on her ultimate here, I would like to see her gain attack up 2 prior to doing the AoE. I think that would also do some pretty nice damage and probably put her in the realm of Baron. Baron gives herself attack up and damage up, like on her trait. And a legendary, like, gets attack up after they attack. And it's the small attack up. So, yeah, if she gains attack up 2 prior to doing this, she could probably do some good damage. And then the last thing that I thought would be pretty cool is this gunfire ability. Instead of reducing ability cooldowns, I think it'd be cool if it ignored 50% of defense. I thought that would be kind of a cool change to Avera, and maybe that would make her relevant. So those are the changes to Avera. So Gangello is perfectly fine. He's still extremely good in Gemini Dragon, and early game for anybody who has him, he's going to really help your progression. I actually think Savannah's fine. She has some uses in the game. Not every hero is going to be absolutely busted, and I think what she does, she's good at. So I think Savannah's fine. Rachel is really good in Queen of Tides and in Guild versus Environment against the Water Boss. Shane is a PvE god basically everywhere. Even I think he has his uses in Arena and PvP modes, but he's definitely amazing all throughout the game, but specifically PvE. So Goobeg. I actually think Goobeg is really, really close to being good. Like, really close. He has the highest base speed in the game. Now, whenever you calculate in, like, masteries and glyphs, I think he is outsped by a couple people. But he's still extremely fast. The problem is, and his trait is awesome. I don't think there's anything wrong with his trait. His kit is a little weird, right? Like, 50% chance to ignore 50% of the target defense, grant 10 speed. Like, this is all kind of weird. And I do have some changes written down on what I think would be okay. But in all honesty, I think if they just change this ultimate to deal high damage to one enemy, I think Goobeg would be fantastic. He would be like a high-speed sniper for the wood element. And I think that's all he needs, in all honesty. So that would be the one change that I make to Goobag. If this is not random and it's on one person, I think he becomes really, really good. And definitely a meta unit, for sure. So Fiona, I actually think is also pretty good too. The only thing I would change is if she is able to activate this dash, I'd like to see dash ignore 25% of the target's defense. I think she would be pretty relevant against, heroes like Hakrin, Nero, Jonathan, who are relevant in the meta. So I think that would be kind of a cool change. Odette, I think, is actually really good in PvE settings, and I think she's pretty viable in Arena as well. I've been beat down by an Odette 1 or 2 times. Donovan. This guy is interesting. He grants the bonus turns similar to Geralt whenever he gets to a certain amount of rage. The problem is he doesn't really do anything else. He can manipulate teams that grant shields, so he would be good against Jonathan. And this activates whenever it deals bonus, whenever a shield is activated on the opponent. Oh, no, sorry. I'm getting things mixed up here. So he casts this ability at the start of his turn, right? So he removes all enemy shields and deals them damage. And then he deals bonus damage equal to 15% of his max health. So his health is okay, but his attack is high. Now, his ultimate ability, it removes all negative effects from him and then deals 220% damage, but then gains 2 rage. Because if he gets more rage, he grants himself a bonus turn, and then if he's ascended, this ultimate is actually it's reset. So that's kind of cool, but it still doesn't do enough. What I would like to see here is on his ultimate, it grants himself increased max health percentage, because that would tie into his battle cry passive, which I think would be pretty cool, where this bonus damage is probably doing a decent amount. And then he also needs to gain some life from this, so maybe 25% of the damage dealt. I think that would make him relevant. Right now, he's okay, like in Faction Wars or whatever, but that's the only place that he's truly relevant. Mathasia is still really good to this day, even though she's one of the OGs. Ashlyn, I just made a video about her. She's amazing. Jocasta, really, really good. Fahim, this guy, he's one of the worst heroes in the game, so he definitely needs some love. His trait grants him invincible, which is kind of cool, but whenever he's attacked, the invincible comes off, and then he launches a counterattack with his basic ability. This guy looks like he should have stealth, and they just released a hero that that grants stealth to the team and also increases damage if people are in stealth, but I think his own trait needs to give him stealth. So I would just add stealth onto his trait, and then on his ultimate ability, I think this massacre mark needs to be increased to 3 turns. If he was constantly putting massacre marks on people where he has stealth up and he's doing these attacks with his passive and then his basic abilities, I think that would be a really cool character. And then the ultimate would also have to grant stealth to him as well. So massacre mark to 3 turns and then grant himself stealth. But with those changes, I think he'd be kind of a unique character to use in not only Arena, but also maybe in some Guild versus Guild or even Queen of Tides dungeon. So that'd be pretty cool. Barclay is really, really good. He's top tier unit for a lot of bleed teams. I wish I had him actually, but he doesn't need any changes. This Fenric guy, I've heard multiple things about him, but he is regarded as one of the worst units in the game. I don't know much about him, but just reading his trait, I did see that he gets rage, but he only increases his rage whenever a member of your team casts their basic ability. I think if your team members, whenever they cast any ability, he gains rage. That might make him more relevant. But again, I've never played him or know anything about him. I just know he's bad, which isn't a good indicator if someone's bad or not, because there's been plenty of times, myself included, where I looked at a character and thought they were bad, and they ended up being amazing. But that is the one thing that I thought could be changed with him. Okay, so moving on to fire. So the verdict is still out on the new hero, Alicia. I think she's pretty cool and unique. I haven't had enough chances to test her, though, so I don't know if she's, really good or really bad. In a lot of different settings. Now, on paper and what I showed in my video, she seems good, so I don't think she needs any kind of changes. Geralt, I think, is also really good. I don't think he needs any change. I think he has been power crept a little bit, but he's still relevant in a couple different places in the game, and whenever he's booked, he's still really good. Florence is just like Shane. She's a PvE god and also relevant in Arena. Bachelard. So this guy, his kit is fine. Like, he's a Ignite hero, and it's pretty cool, but his trait does absolutely nothing. Like, this whole counterattack thing is so dumb, and I think they just need to remove this. Since he does so many different Ignites on his abilities, I think it would just be really cool to have him double the damage that Ignites do to someone who has them, right? I think that would make him pretty relevant in GVE. He's still good in Guild versus Environment right now, but this trait is just so weird, and it does nothing for him. So I would change that to have some kind of interaction with Ignite. Cirrus. So Cirrus has also been kind of power crept and outclassed. She used to be a synthesis hero, but they took her away, which is interesting. The tinfoil hat person in me would say that she's going to be useful somewhere else, and they didn't want someone to be able to get her so easily. But the other side of me knows that they probably just replaced her for a more relevant hero for beginners. But Cirrus is actually not a bad hero. She has the ability to turn her single target damage abilities into AoE abilities, even though they'll count as single target, which is relevant against certain meta units. This ultimate ability, though, I think it needs to grant attack up 2, and then if it contained defense pierce, I think she could be pretty relevant in PvP. She's got very high base speed, so this could be another one of those fire speed snipers in PvP. And I think she would still be relevant in Void Tower Hard and all of those places where she used to be relevant. But that is one of the changes that I would make. And then her basic, if the defense pierce is being put on the ultimate, I would put just random attack stats up on this basic ability, similar to what who is it? Gavin. Similar to what Gavin has, which is just, attack up, crit damage up, yada, yada, yada. I think that would be a nice change for Cirrus. All right, now, moving on. I was going to jump ahead, but Zitlin is still really good, relevant in plenty of places in the game, still relevant in dungeons, still relevant in Guild versus Environment. Hector, I think, is perfectly fine how he is. He has his places, mainly in Guild versus Environment and some Guild Boss teams still, so I don't think he needs to do anything. Brand is still really good. No changes to Brand. Balbereth. This guy, I think, is really close to being good. He has a cool trait where he gets revived and then puts an ability immunity on himself as well, and then resets all of his active abilities. So his ultimate, it refreshes his trait if he kills somebody. But the problem is this just does not do enough damage against tanky units, and there's just so many buffs that don't allow him to effectively use this ultimate. So the one thing that I thought would be cool and would make him relevant in PvP, because he's a PvP unit, is this ultimate ability ignores invincible and death immunity. I think he would be a real menace for teams that relied on stuff like that. So it would be a really cool counter pick. I don't think he'd be overpowered. I think it would just be a nice counter pick and would make him relevant. So I do think that would be a cool change to Balberith. Ralph is nuts. I don't think he needs any more buffs. He just got buffed, even though it was described as a bug fix. Giranol is really, really good still in PvP settings. Darcy is absolutely terrible. I think she's one of the worst units in the game. Her trait is way too slow. This 5% damage probably needs to be 10%. And her battle spirit, I think, also needs to increase her defense in HP. Like, give her survivability. I think that's the first thing that can be done. She does counterattack when she takes like 35% of her max health. I don't know if that's good enough. Maybe it should be 25% or something. And then her ultimate ability, whenever she grants this invincible on herself, I think it should be the good invincible, which is it just stays there until her next turn instead of being removed upon taking a valid hit, and then just, remove this other stuff. So that's Darcy. And then the rest of the fire units are actually really good. Alicia's great, extremely meta unit. Levi, I love, if you guys are watching any of my videos. Gavin, I haven't got him built, but I think if he were to have books put in him, he would be quite good. And there is still some speculation that he's going to be relevant in a newer dungeon. Matson is still really good in Guild versus Environment comps. Solid unit there. Rosalie was just released. I think she's very good. I think she's just a little outclassed by Alicia in PvP, but still a great dungeon unit for sure. Taliesin is another really good fire unit that I think is just outclassed by a couple people, but there's nothing wrong with him. Still really good. And same thing with Valeria. Valeria is really good in certain settings of the game. And to be honest, other than Giranol, she's probably the best AoE fire nuker in the game still. It's just that the meta in PvP isn't really that way. But in PvE, she's still really good. And if she was booked out, I'm sure she'd be a really nice damage dealer in PvE settings. Okay, so this Grayson hero was just he was just attainable today or yesterday. I do have him, and then we got him as a trial unit as well from the developers. And I know some people have made videos on him already. He does seem like a good unit, but specifically maybe for dungeons. Tia, I think, is still really good. I think she's pretty viable in RTA and Arena still. Opal is a dungeon queen. She's amazing. Nero is amazing. Pluto's actually been completely outclassed, ironically. He's been outclassed. I think Opal already outclasses him, but this Grayson character seems to be doing faster times than with Pluto. And then also Rosalie makes things a lot easier for people who are like mid-game. So Pluto has one use, and his use is to be the damage dealer for Void Tower Mythic, but he's only viable if you have Dark Hassle. So good luck with that. And then on top of that, he is used in some of the bounties in the game. But other than that, yeah, he needs a little bit of love. The thing that I would change with him is if he's ascended, have his ultimate ability proc if there are 4 units, not more than. So if there's exactly 4 units, he'll still do his ultimate ability launch. I think this would make him relevant in a bunch of different places. But that 4 or more is a real issue because it specifically is revolving around, Ash Magisteria dungeon or Void Tower, and I don't like that. So I think it would make him relevant if it was exactly for when he was ascended. Holly is fine. She's really, really good. Tashir's really, really good and underrated. Malhex actually isn't that bad either, and he has his places in the game where he's useful. But his ultimate ability, I would like to see this be a defense down 2. I think it would make him a little more relevant in some places. I think he would be pretty good in Ash Magisteria again, too, if this was a defense down 2 as well, especially for people that didn't have Shane or this Grayson character. Elune. So Elune is next. So that means Ciara's fine. Mikasa is also fine, and then Hydrissia is also fine. But this Elune character, she was the first Matrix hero, similar to what we have now with Grayson. And her trait is like really useless. I do think I think she needs a rework, to be honest. But anyway, if I were to make changes to her now, this trait, I would have it work similar to Alistair, which is a light epic character, where he has a passive that reads like the second character to go on your enemy's team, he attacks them and has a chance to stun. I would like this first part to work the same way, where it's a 2-turn cooldown, but the second character in your opponent's team has a 100% chance to be slept instead of this random enemy thing. I think that would make her pretty relevant. And then her AoE, her ultimate, I would like to see this be an AoE silence, and I think that would be, interesting. So that might give her some uses, Okay, next is Thor. So Thor is actually another one of those characters that is pretty good. Like, I don't think he's bad, but I do want to see one change to his kit, and that's have this Lunar Instinct ability that he triggers off of his ultimate also have the same effect as his ultimate, where it ignores all positive effects. If that happened, I think Thor would be way more meta. So I would love to see that change. I don't know if it would be made or not, but I think that would take him into the playable range in PvP. Hyam, I think, is still really good. Aaron is amazing in a lot of PvE content, for sure one of the top tier units there. Blackhorn's definitely fallen out of all aspects of the game. He still is used in some compositions in Guild vs. Environment, but overall he's been outclassed by a bunch of different heroes. So if I were to change anything on him, it would be his ultimate ability, which might give him some relevance in Arena. But I would like to see this restore his health to all team members, heal over time, and then remove all negative effects on your heroes. I think that might make him relevant. But if it's just a big heal over time, this does nothing nowadays. So if he removed the effects first and then did these big heals, I think he might be a decent choice. Therese, still really good. He just needs some investment to be useful, but he's a very viable character. Poros, I've never played with, don't have any kind of gauge here, so I can't really tell you anything about him. Aphrodite is a top tier unit in PvP right now, and I think she's still even useful in some areas of PvE. Lydia has fallen off a little bit because of Ashlyn, but I still think that she's good. So I wouldn't change anything to her. I still think she's fine. She's just countered hard by one character. And then this character, a lot of people think she's terrible, and I just don't have a whole lot of knowledge into her, but just reading her trait, this launching a joint attack with a basic ability when ally is taunted and attacks the target, this is so situational. If she just launched a joint attack anytime one of your teammates launches a basic ability, I think that would be pretty cool and maybe make her relevant. Because you don't want to use basic abilities on your heroes. You know, they're ultimating or they're using their special abilities or whatever. So having that on there, I don't think would be broken, but it gives her a chance each time, you know, to launch a bonus attack with her ultimate ability, which, her special ability. Oh no, ultimate ability, yeah, which would provide herself with these stacks of counterattacks. So that could be kind of cool. But yeah, another character I don't have. But anyway, those are my kind of choices of people that need to be buffed a little bit and become a little more relevant in the game. I think a lot of them are minor changes, except maybe for the light and dark heroes. Because they're the hardest characters to get in the game, I don't think any of them should be bad. And some of them are bad. So yeah, other than that, guys, you know, let me know what you guys think of my changes. If you think other heroes need buff that I missed, I'm really interested to know. So as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.